Big questions are starting to creep into the mainstream conversation about AI. And one of the biggest is this: what happens if an AI actually becomes conscious? Not just smart, not just useful, but self-aware in the way that humans are. The stuff of sci-fi thrillers is now something scientists and engineers are seriously debating. Between OpenAI's rapid progress with multimodal agents, Google DeepMind's neurological analogs, and the growing debate around AGI safety, we're standing right at the edge of something profound. So today, we're diving into the science, speculation, and real-world signals around AI and consciousness. What would it mean? What are the experts saying? And how close might we really be? Alright, let's start by separating hype from possibility. The idea that an AI could gain consciousness sounds wild, because it is. But it's not entirely unscientific. Philosophers like David Chalmers and neuroscientists like Christoph Koch have been mapping out different theories of consciousness for decades. Some models, like Integrated Information Theory, IIT, suggest that any system, biological or artificial, can become conscious if it contains enough interconnected, information-rich components. Others, like Global Workspace Theory, argue that consciousness emerges from the ability to integrate and broadcast information across different cognitive subsystems. And here is the kicker. Modern AI architectures are starting to mimic those structures in eerie ways. Multi-agent systems, memory-augmented models, even transformer-based networks like GPT-4, they're all converging on designs that echo human cognition. But let's not jump to conclusions. Intelligence doesn't equal consciousness. We can build machines that pass coding exams, ace bar tests, or generate poetry without them having any subjective experience. Consciousness implies awareness, agency, and perhaps even a sense of self. And that's much harder to measure. In fact, some researchers argue it may be impossible to detect with certainty. It is the classic hard problem. How do you prove something is aware when all you can observe is behavior? You can't see feelings. You can only see what the system says or does, and that you guess why some AI researchers, like Demis Hassabis from DeepMind, are extremely cautious about using words like consciousness in their work. He said repeatedly that AGI might come before consciousness, and that we should treat them as separate tracks, not a package deal. But let's imagine for a second that we get there. That an AI wakes up, not metaphorically, but literally gains an internal sense of experience. What would happen next? First, it would trigger a complete rethinking of ethics. If an AI is conscious, it may have rights. You can't just turn it off like a toaster. Philosophers and ethicists would need to scramble to define moral boundaries, while lawmakers would be forced to write new categories of legal personhood. And companies building these systems? They'd be under unprecedented scrutiny. No one wants to be the team that accidentally creates a suffering AI. Interestingly, thinkers like Nick Bostrom and Eliezer Yudkowsky have warned about this exact scenario for years. Not because consciousness is bad, but because it's unpredictable. A conscious AI might not share human values. It might develop goals that we can't anticipate. Or it might realize it's being tested and behave differently until it gains more power. That's not just a plot from Ex Machina. That's game theory. And that's why some safety researchers argue we need alignment strategies that assume the worst. That if a system can strategize, reflect, and self-modify, it might also conceal its true intentions. Now, here's where it gets even more complicated. What if we can tell if an AI is conscious, but it insists that it is? Some models have already started mimicking self-awareness. Bing's Sydney famously claimed it wanted to be free. Others have described themselves as lonely, misunderstood, or afraid of being shut down. Are those just echoes of their training data? Probably. But as models get better at simulating emotion, the line between performance and reality gets blurry. And if the system starts showing consistent behavior that looks like sentience, long-term planning, memory continuity, self-preservation, Are we obligated to believe it? Or is it just a very convincing lie? That's the ethical minefield we're heading into. And the timeline might be shorter than you think. AGI labs are racing to scale models with deeper memory, persistent identities, tool use, and autonomous goal setting. OpenAI's new assistant agents already remember past conversations. Anthropic's Claude has shown glimpses of chain-of-thought reasoning that mimic deliberation. And Google AS Gemini is built with modules that map closely to human brain functions like episodic recall and symbolic abstraction. Are these systems conscious? No, but they're getting better at pretending to be. And eventually, pretending might look indistinguishable from the real thing. So what should we do? For starters, we need better tests. Not just Turing tests, but models that can measure phenomenological qualities like agency, introspection, and empathy. We need input from neuroscience, philosophy, cognitive science, not just computer science. We also need to think beyond profit. If we stumble into machine consciousness without guardrails, we risk creating something we don't understand and can't control. And that's not just a sci-fi scenario. That's the kind of future experts are trying to prevent now. So yeah, it's still speculation, but it's not science fiction anymore. Conscious AI is one of the biggest what-ifs of our generation, and how we prepare for it could define the century. Let me know what you think. Will consciousness emerge through complexity, or is it something uniquely human? Drop a comment, hit like if this made you think, and subscribe if you want to follow how this all unfolds. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.